Sydney, late winter 2007. Backpackers filled the streets near Central Station, trading stories, maps folded into pockets, plans scribbled in hostel notebooks. Among them was 23-year-old Lena Hart, last seen boarding a city bus at 8:45 p.m. She never returned. Within hours, her possessions were sealed in an evidence locker. A folded tourist map, smeared with oil, circled in blue ink, sat on top. Police scoured the coastline, searched bars, questioned drivers, but each lead dissolved. For years, silence replaced answers, and her family lived beside the absence. Then, a decade later, a volunteer uncovered a scratched metal key tag near an abandoned factory. It bore the number 17, the same number written on Lena's map. That discovery forced the case open again. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from today. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Sydney in late winter 2007 carried a chill that clung to the glass facades near Central Station. Buses idled, headlights streaking across damp asphalt, while travelers moved between hostels and ticket counters. Among them was 23-year-old Lena Hart, recorded in hostel logs under neat black ink. Arrival time stamped 3 p.m. Her backpack was listed in the property ledger, blue nylon with a broken zipper pull. By 8:45 p.m. that same evening, she was observed stepping onto a city bus. The driver, later identified as Owen McKinnon, noted nothing unusual. A young woman with a folded tourist map in her hand, the corners stiff and smudged. His shift sheet and digital clock matched the timestamp on the bus's internal CCTV. A second camera mounted near the back door captured a blurred silhouette consistent with Lena's clothing, a dark jacket and slim jeans. When Lena failed to return to the hostel, receptionist Riley Shaw completed a standard incident form. The form, signed and archived, triggered a missing person report at 9:30 a.m. the following day. Within hours, police arrived, sealing Lena's personal effects inside a transparent property tote. The inventory read like a ledger: wallet, 3 ticket stubs, a paperback novel, toiletries, and the folded tourist map. At the top of the page, officer initials confirmed the chain of custody. The map was unremarkable at first glance. Sold at kiosks near the station, printed on coated stock. But when opened, its creases revealed 5 circles drawn in blue ink, each pressed hard enough to indent the paper. One circle encircled a section of the inner west industrial belt, where warehouses stood hollow and rusted. Another traced a coastal lookout. The ink bled faintly where the tip had paused. Detective Rowan Pike ordered the map photographed, scaled, and sealed as Exhibit 12. Technicians noted a faint oil smear along one fold, consistent with contact from a hand or surface contaminated with lubricant. Under oblique light, the smear reflected differently than skin oil. Trevor Ng, forensic imaging, enhanced the bus stop footage. Lena's figure visible near the rear door at 8:45 p.m. A faint outline of her daypack straps. Simultaneously, a cell site analysis team pulled logs from the mobile provider. Lena's phone had connected to 3 towers in sequence. The final ping at 9:02 p.m. fixed to a mast less than 500 meters from a disused factory compound. The log sheet listed the tower ID, sector azimuth, and call detail records, each line printed and initialed. That tower served little pedestrian traffic at night, making the hit conspicuous. Claire Hart, Lena's older sister, arrived 2 days later. Her first stop was not the hostel, but the station's property office. Behind glass, she was shown the tote. Each item bore a numbered tag. She pressed her hand against the surface, eyes drawn to the map. Officers explained that fingerprints were being lifted, fibers taped, and residues tested. Claire asked if she could photograph it. She was denied, the form citing preservation protocols. Instead, she began copying every number, every initial, every timestamp into a notebook. At the hostel, she retraced her sister's final steps. Riley Shaw recounted seeing Lena at the desk, map unfolded, asking about buses toward the west. The logbook still lay open, Lena's name entered on line 47. Upstairs, roommates described her as cheerful, preparing snacks before leaving. Their written statements, dated and signed, were collected into the case file. Detectives widened their net. CCTV from traffic intersections along Parramatta Road produced another clue: a white van, captured at 9 p.m., sliding through a yellow light. The plate was unreadable, motion blur obscuring characters, but the outline was distinct. Sliding side door, flat panels, roof rack. The image was printed, marked with grease pencil, and pinned on the evidence board beside the map. Chain of custody logs multiplied. Each transfer, from hostel staff to police, from police to lab, from lab back to archive, generated receipts. Claire began requesting copies through official forms, recording response dates in her notebook. At night, she spread the documents across her rented flat, taping timelines along the wall. She handled it as investigators did: routine, procedural, detached. Only the act of tracing the map's circles with her fingertip betrayed persistence beyond the file. Weather records from that evening noted light rain at 9 p.m., visibility reduced. Bus driver Owen McKinnon confirmed condensation on the windows, which blurred the view outside. He recalled Lena stepping down one stop earlier than passengers expected for the coast. His logbook carried the time: 9:01 p.m., signature affixed at the bottom. That placed her less than 300 meters from the factory gates. The abandoned compound loomed large on aerial photographs. Roofs caved, windows shattered, chain link fences sagging. Police marked it as a possible destination but lacked grounds for full entry in the first days. The map's central circle aligned almost perfectly with its northern yard. Trevor Eng prepared overlays, transparent sheets stacked on a light box, bus routes, tower sectors, map circles, all converging. Claire studied the overlays under fluorescent light. Her notebook now carried sketches of tower positions, copies of bus schedules, and photocopies of the CCTV frames. Each element fed her growing wall of references. She began to mark her own circles, pressing hard with a pen, mimicking the weight left by her sister. In the sterile rooms of the station, the case formed not through testimony but through objects. A smudged map, a blurred van frame, a call record line ending abruptly. Each object reduced Lena's presence to artifacts cataloged and sealed. By the end of the first week, the evidence board carried a single dominant theme. Geography was not background. It was the lead itself. All circles converged on the inner yard of the abandoned factory. The Hart family rented a narrow apartment on Pitt Street, 3 floors up, overlooking a lane where delivery trucks idled. By the second week, the space had transformed into a command center. Claire Hart filled the kitchen wall with photocopies, string, and notes copied by hand from police documents. A foam board stood against the counter, the folded tourist map pinned at the center. Every circle was numbered. The largest, marked in blue ink, contained the outline of the abandoned factory. On the table, forms accumulated. Claire drafted her first Freedom of Information requests. She demanded bus CCTV stills, transit timetables, and call records. Letters were posted in duplicate, each stamped with date and time, then photographed for reference. The handwriting was steady, her lines underlined with ruler strokes. Detective Rowan Pike remained cautious. Official search grids concentrated along the coastline after rumors of hikers finding fabric scraps. Divers scanned tidal shelves, logging dive times, currents, and recovered debris. Chain of custody sheets from those operations listed nothing belonging to Lena. Yet the coastal search consumed manpower for weeks, forcing the factory district lower in priority. Claire resisted. She compared the circles to bus routes. She traced stop sequences against Lena's mobile ping, then drew overlays with red marker. She purchased enlarged aerial prints from a shop on Castlereagh Street, taping them into a mosaic. Over these, she pressed pins where the map's blue ink had landed. Patterns emerged, stops leading west, not east. Witness canvases provided mixed fragments. Bartender Kurt Doyle remembered Lena stopping for one drink at 7:15 p.m. He logged the sale in the bar's POS terminal, a single beer, cash transaction, receipt archived. He noted she carried a map, folded but visible, in her pocket. Bus driver Owen McKinnon repeated his account. Lena stepped off one stop early, near the fenced factory gates. His logbook carried the note, "Female passenger alighted, 9:01 p.m." Each statement entered the police record, but none shifted the focus away from the sea. Claire underlined them in her notebook, writing "Not Coast" beside each. She developed a routine: photocopy, underline, circle, paste. The board grew layered with overlapping pages, clear tape crossing corners. At the center, one circle carried a scrawl different from Lena's known handwriting. It was the number 17, pressed heavy in ink. The mark was angled, slanted against the factory grid. Claire pressed her palm against it each night, the indentation visible under raking light. The war room became ritual. Volunteers, other travelers who had known Lena, stopped by, offering scraps of recollection. Claire logged each on lined paper, noting dates, times, and cross-references. If a statement lacked an anchor, receipt, CCTV, or log, she drew a line through it. The wall began to resemble a forensic chart more than a family's vigil. Detectives grew uneasy at the duplication. Pike visited once, noting Claire's board mirrored his own at the station. He warned her against contamination of evidence. She said nothing, sliding another FOI form into its envelope. The map remained at the core. Its circles defied randomness. The ink strokes landed on measurable coordinates, each verifiable through logs and timetables. Claire treated it as a blueprint written in her sister's absence. At night, she copied bus route times onto the kitchen tiles with erasable marker. She stood back, staring as the lines intersected the factory perimeter. Each intersection, each note, reinforced her conviction. One circle stood apart, the one carrying the number 17. The tourist map, bagged and labeled as Exhibit 12, traveled from the property office to the forensic document lab. Chain of custody forms bore 4 signatures: patrol officer, evidence technician, courier, and examiner. Claire tracked each line through FOI responses, reconstructing its journey. Every transfer represented another set of initials, another timestamp, another fragment of accountability she recorded in her notebook. At the laboratory, forensic document examiner Emily Cross placed the map under magnification. She compared the heavy blue ink to Lena's known writing samples, a hostel sign-in line, and a scribbled note from her room. The curvature matched in part, but pressure points and angular slants suggested a second hand. Cross annotated her findings in a typed report. Circle pressure inconsistent with subject's hand, probable addition by alternate writer. The ink itself underwent gas chromatography mass spectrometry. Analyst notes confirmed the solvent blend matched pens supplied at the hostel reception desk. Box serial numbers confirmed shipment to the hostel 2 weeks before Lena's arrival. A simple biro, yet its residue narrowed the source to a handful of pens handled by dozens of guests. Claire absorbed each page. She underlined alternate writer, then taped the report beside a blown-up photograph of the map. She began connecting threads. If Lena had drawn some circles, who had pressed the pen harder, adding others? A technician lifted microfibers from the map's folds using adhesive tape. Under microscopy, 3 distinct fibers emerged. One synthetic blue strand consistent with Lena's backpack lining, one cotton thread, and one irregular fiber coated with a greasy sheen. Dr. Aisha Rahman cataloged the last as foreign, not attributable to known belongings. Its trace was sealed in a microvial, logged into evidence. Claire visited the lab on public viewing day, standing behind glass as Emily Cross pointed at projected enlargements. The ink ridges glowed under oblique light, deep gouges where the pen had paused. She felt no emotion, only the steady pressure to copy every measurement into her notebook. Riley Shaw, the hostel receptionist, confirmed pens were kept on the front desk. Visitors frequently borrowed them, returning with bent clips and drained cartridges. The box was replaced weekly. Records showed a refilled delivery the morning Lena arrived. Claire filed that detail, cross-linking it to the ink profile. Late one evening, a volunteer analyst printed overlays of Lena's genuine handwriting alongside the unknown circles. He pinned them on Claire's wall, one delicate, rounded, the other heavy, angular. The comparison was undeniable. The oil smear on the map's fold also underwent Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy. The spectrum matched not skin oil, but a petroleum-based lubricant, consistent with mechanical grease. Cross's report ended with, "Grease residue traceable to industrial environment." Claire circled the phrase, "industrial environment," 3 times in red. She pinned it directly beside the factory photograph. Roof lines collapsed, fences rusting. The map ceased to be a guide. It had become a witness. Its creases held fibers, oils, and inks that did not belong to Lena alone. Each laboratory sheet transformed the paper into an artifact layered with multiple hands. When the lab courier returned Exhibit 12 to storage, Claire was already there, logging the transfer into her private chronology. She copied the courier's initials into her notebook and pressed her palm against the glass barrier. For her, the most haunting detail was not the blurred van, not the coastal searches, but the thick number etched in blue. 17. Slanted, deliberate, out of place among the careful lines of Lena's known writing. The circles were no longer random annotations. They were a message, pressed into paper by someone else's hand. Detective Rowan Pike requested a geographic overlay session. Transparent sheets were spread across a light table inside the forensic mapping unit. On one layer, the bus timetable, scheduled stops, intervals, and driver logs. On another, Lena Hart's cell site pings extracted from the 9:02 p.m. dump. A third carried the scanned image of her map, circles traced in thick blue ink. When stacked, lines and arcs converged. The largest circle fell directly over the gates of the abandoned factory in the inner west. Bus driver Owen McKinnon was interviewed again. He produced his shift log, signed in blue ink, noting an unscheduled pause at 9:01 p.m. when Lena stepped off. His handwriting was photographed, his logbook seized, copied, and returned with receipt number 4471. He recalled condensation on the windows, but a figure with a backpack descended one stop early, near the chain-link fence of the industrial complex. Claire followed every detail. She secured aerial photographs from a commercial provider, overlaying them against the police maps. At her kitchen wall, she replicated the transparency stack: route, tower, circle. Red string ran from the hostel pin outward, ending at the perimeter fence. She wrote "Convergence" in block letters beneath the photo of the rusted factory yard. The forensic unit extracted still frames from the bus's internal CCTV. Image 22A showed Lena standing at the rear door, right hand on the rail, folded map visible in her left. Image 22B, taken 2 seconds later, captured the door opening, rain streaking across the lens. Beyond the door, darkness, corrugated steel fencing, and the outline of a sign tilted at an angle. The time code burned into the corner read 9:107 p.m. Cell site data aligned perfectly. The 9:02 p.m. ping connected to a mast positioned 500 meters southwest of the factory gates. Analysts plotted azimuth coverage, showing her handset within the industrial grid, not at the coast. A comparison chart was printed, signed, and pinned under the heading "Last Known Location." Trevor Eng produced a digital composite, layering all datasets. The hostel checkout time, bus boarding at 8:45 p.m., disembarkation at 9:01 p.m., final ping at 9:02 p.m. Each element was plotted with arrows. The convergence formed a single point, the abandoned factory yard. Claire received copies through her FOI persistence. She taped them to her wall, cross-referencing margins with her own notes. She circled 9:01 p.m. 3 times, highlighting the precision. Every official record, every timestamp aligned toward the same gate. Yet police diverted resources elsewhere. Reports surfaced of a possible sighting near the coast. Patrol logs listed search hours, dog units, divers, none producing material evidence. Claire underlined negative in the recovery report, noting how resources bled away from the industrial district. She kept her focus on the map. The number 17 stared back from its fold, heavy, alien, unaligned with Lena's handwriting. She photographed the mark under raking light, the indentation stark against the coated paper. She labeled the photo, "Foreign Hand, factory locus. The investigation's geography was no longer broad. It had narrowed to a single square of asphalt, a yard of cracked concrete where bus timetables, tower signals, and ink circles agreed. She pinned the final composite printout at the center of her wall. The caption beneath read, "She stepped off one stop early, at the gates." The abandoned factory complex stretched across 4 hectares of rusted corrugated iron and collapsed roofing. Entry required a warrant, but detectives secured access after trespassing reports from local residents. On the morning of September 14th, police technicians crossed the sagging fence line with cameras, tape measures, and casting kits. The air smelled of wet concrete and machine oil. Inside, dust settled on long, idle conveyor belts. Windows had been smashed, leaving glass fragments embedded in the floor. In the northern yard, investigators documented tire impressions pressed into a thin layer of grime. Each track was photographed at scale, then filled with dental stone for casting. Distinct tread patterns indicated a light commercial van, size consistent with a white box frame model. Lena Hart watched from beyond the perimeter, noting every item bagged and sealed. She copied property numbers into her notebook. Soil trace, metal shavings, lubricant residue. She memorized the receipt codes, later matching them against FOI returns. Forensic technician Dr. Aisha Rahman swabbed the hinges of a steel padlock. Under magnification, tool marks revealed attempted forced entry, the pattern consistent with a pry bar. The padlock itself was tagged and logged as Exhibit 23. Adjacent surfaces bore smears of dark grease. Samples were scraped, sealed in vials, and transported under chain of custody. When those samples were tested, Spectra identified a petroleum-based industrial lubricant used in heavy machinery. The same signature appeared faintly on the fold of Lena's tourist map. The comparison chart displayed matching peaks and valleys, recorded in Rahman's report. Claire circled the notation in her copy, pinning it beside the photograph of the map. Deeper inside the yard, police uncovered fragments of nylon webbing. Fibers clung to a rusted hook embedded in the wall. Under microscopy, the fibers matched common backpack straps. The finding was logged, but declared inconclusive without full DNA. For Claire, it confirmed alignment. Lena's day pack was blue nylon, straps frayed near the edges. Security guard Luca Marino, who patrolled the district sporadically, gave a statement. He reported seeing a white van parked at the gate on multiple nights, sometimes idling with headlights dimmed. He provided approximate dates, scribbled on scrap paper during his night shifts. The paper was collected, signed, and stapled into the file. Nadine Walsh, a scrap dealer, confirmed purchasing odd lots of stripped metal from a man driving a white van. Her ledger, handwritten, listed cash amounts in words: $50, $80. The entries bore initials but no names. Police photocopied the ledger, returning the original with receipt. Claire highlighted each transaction date, noting alignment with the nights Lena was missing. The factory site was photographed exhaustively. Each wall bore spray-painted numbers, each room mapped with chalk grids. Under ultraviolet light, faint smears appeared along a corridor wall. Samples were lifted, producing partial protein traces. Analysts noted insufficient quantity for conclusive testing, but the smear's greasy texture paralleled the lubricant found on the map fold. The atmosphere inside the warehouse grew oppressive. Every object, the tire tracks, the padlock, the grease, pointed toward activity after hours. The site had become more than abandoned structure. It was an operational environment for someone who moved unseen. Claire pressed copies of the spectra against the photograph of the folded map. She saw the overlap in ink, grease, and geography. She marked a single line across her wall: map, grease, factory. The findings narrowed suspicion from rumor to evidence. No longer was the factory just a circled coordinate. It was a place marked by matching residues, a yard where tire impressions waited beside rusted gates. By dusk, detectives sealed the northern yard with yellow tape. Claire stood outside the fence, writing one sentence at the bottom of her notes. The smear on the map matched the grease inside the northern yard, The investigation shifted focus after a rumor surfaced. A backpacker named Brent Iverson claimed to have seen Lena near the Bondi headlands on the night she vanished. Word spread quickly, amplified by tabloid calls. Detectives responded by launching coastal searches, deploying divers and canine units. Patrol logs noted start times, weather conditions, and tide measurements. Every line ended the same: no recoveries, negative trace. Lena Hart watched resources peel away from the industrial zone. She filed the coastal reports as distractions, writing noise in capital letters across her notes. Still, the process had to be tested. Divers brought up plastic debris, fishing lines, and fabric strips, none linked to Lena. Each item received a property tag, bagged and filed, but cross-checks eliminated them. None matched her clothing or possessions. Brent Iverson was brought into the interview room. Detectives recorded his statement under caution. He described seeing a young woman walking alone, jacket zipped, hair obscured by a hood. Yet his timeline faltered. Transaction logs showed him withdrawing $40 from an ATM at 8:55 p.m. in Redfern, 15 minutes before he claimed to see Lena by the cliffs. The ATM receipt bore his signature and timestamp. Investigators corroborated further. Railway CCTV caught Iverson boarding a train at 9:10 p.m., destination northbound. Ticketing data aligned, scanning his paper ticket at the gate. The system logged his entry to the platform. The timeline closed around him, leaving no room for a detour to the coast. His alibi was sealed, documented in chain of custody envelopes. Claire pinned the ATM receipt copy on her wall, circling the numbers. She underlined 9:10 p.m. entry gate 3 times, proof that the coastal lid collapsed. She struck through the map's coastal circle with a pencil, marking it as irrelevant. Noise became her shorthand for every rumor not supported by receipts or logs. Detective Pike filed a formal elimination memo. Subject Iverson excluded as potential witness, timeline inconsistent. The memo entered the case file with signatures, closing that lead. The coastal searches consumed manpower, but their emptiness reinforced the geometry of the map. All verifiable anchors, bus CCTV, cell site data, driver log, pointed inward to the factory gates, not outward to the sea. Claire redrew her wall with thicker lines, factory coordinates bold at the center. She adopted a methodical rhythm: rumor received, rumor tested, rumor destroyed. Her strategy mirrored investigators, though hers was born from persistence, not authority. Every failed lead reduced possibilities until only the industrial district remained. By mid-October, the factory circle had outlasted every alternative. The blue ink mark of 17 stood alone, heavy and unexplained. Claire taped a fresh note beneath it, one word in block capitals: convergence. The case no longer sprawled across city maps. It had narrowed to 1 yard of concrete and steel, and every distraction, the coastlines, the cliffs, the rumors, had been cut away as noise. By November, attention shifted firmly to the workers who moved through the industrial belt at night. One name surfaced in ledger cross-checks: Darren Cole, 36, contracted for scrap recovery in the abandoned district. He drove a white box-frame van registered to a defunct company. His toll records showed regular passages through the M4 corridor at odd hours. Fuel logbooks from a service station listed cash transactions in words: $40, $60, signed with his initials. Detective Sergeant Eleni Pappas gathered the fragments. Scrap dealer Nadine Walsh produced her handwritten ledger. Dates and sums matched nights when Lena vanished. $80, van man, she had written in shorthand. Police photocopied the pages, sealed the originals with receipt 5027. Forensic teams re-examined Cole's vehicle after a roadside stop. Carpet fibers were lifted from the cargo area. Under polarized light, they matched blue nylon consistent with backpack straps. Microscopy revealed identical fraying to fibers recovered from Lena's daypack straps, logged weeks earlier. The report, signed by Dr. Aisha Rahman, stated strong association. Claire learned of the finding through a redacted FOI release. She taped the fiber comparison chart to her wall, drawing arrows between van carpet and backpack strap. she wrote embedded in the margin. The convergence tightened. During questioning, Cole claimed routine scrap runs. His toll tag supported frequent entries near the factory, but his explanations blurred under pressure. He denied passengers, denied contact with anyone near the bus stop. Yet his van's service records placed him on the road the very night Lena disappeared. Further testing revealed a faint smear of blue ink on a pair of work gloves seized from his toolbox. Emily Cross analyzed the stain. Chromatography confirmed the ink's profile matched pens supplied at the hostel reception. The gloves were sealed as Exhibit 29, photographed under ultraviolet light. The combination was damning. Bus CCTV showed Lena stepping off at the factory gates. Cell site data placed her phone within range. Tire impressions at the yard matched Cole's van dimensions. Fibers tied the backpack to his carpet. And now, ink from the same hostel pen marked his gloves. Claire copied every exhibit number into her notebook. She underlined Exhibit 29 3 times. The blue ink smear represented contact, not abstract geography, not rumor, but physical residue linking the van man to Lena's last known possession. Her wall of notes now bore a simple chain: hostel pen, map, gloves, van. The circle numbered 17 on Lena's map stood unresolved. But each forensic fragment pulled closer to the man who drove the white van through the gates of the abandoned factory, and the strap fiber remained embedded deep within his carpet weave. Claire's persistence transformed into open strategy. She organized volunteers, fellow travelers, local students, retired officers, into a loose network. They met at her apartment, where the wall of documents had grown into a replica of an evidence board. At its center, the folded tourist map glared under a desk lamp. The number 17 remained circled in heavy blue. Money raised through crowdfunding, each contribution listed in receipts and tracked in spreadsheets, was funneled toward private testing. A portion paid for low copy number DNA analysis of the map's creases. The sample was shipped under seal to independent examiner Samir Qureshi, who specialized in touch DNA. Weeks later, his report arrived. Partial alleles consistent with Lena, but also foreign markers that could not be explained by family transfer. The conclusion: mixed profile present, at least 2 contributors. Claire highlighted the phrase, then taped it beneath the map's photograph. Meanwhile, her FOI requests began to bear fruit. A heavily redacted packet arrived. Still frames from a roadside CCTV camera positioned near the factory gates. One blurred figure walked in frame at 9:02 p.m. The file carried official stamps, time codes, and an officer's signature. Claire filed it under corroboration. The most startling discovery came not from police, but from the volunteers. During a sweep of drainage channels near the factory's northern wall, a student reached into the muck and pulled out a corroded metal tag. Scratched, bent, its surface stamped with a single number, 17. The find was photographed in situ, bagged in a clean evidence pouch, and logged before delivery to police custody. Chain of custody forms bore volunteer signatures beside official initials. The resonance was immediate. On Lena's map, 17 had been written in heavy blue ink, alien to her handwriting. Now, a physical tag carrying the same number emerged from the environment she was last seen entering. Detective Pappas admitted the item as Exhibit 32. Reports described it as an aluminum key tag, typical of locker systems used in industrial facilities. Its scratches suggested prolonged use, edges worn from handling. Soil embedded in its grooves matched samples from the drainage channel. Claire added a fresh photograph of the tag to her wall. She drew a line connecting it to the circled 17 on the map. Beneath, she wrote, "Object echoes annotation." The discovery forced renewed attention on the factory. What had been a theory stitched by one sister now carried the weight of a tangible artifact. The number 17 was no longer just ink on paper. It existed in metal, in scratches, in soil. The map's geometry, the van's fibers, and the ink-stained gloves converged on a single locker, waiting somewhere inside the abandoned complex. The number 17 had stepped out of the map and into evidence. A warrant was secured for the workers' lockers inside the abandoned factory annex. The rusted block of steel cabinets lined a wall near the former tool room, each door dented, paint flaking, numbers stenciled in faded black. When the seized key tag marked 17 was fitted, one locker door clicked open. The metallic snap echoed in the empty hall, recorded on video for the chain of custody log. Inside, the air smelled of dust and oil. Investigators cataloged 3 primary items: a folded tarpaulin streaked with grime, a bundle of plastic cable ties, and a deactivated factory access badge. Each was bagged, tagged, and sealed. Photographs captured positions before removal, ruler scales placed against every edge. The tarpaulin underwent immediate field testing. Sprays of luminol across its creases bloomed under blue light, glowing arcs that spread across the fabric. Technicians recorded each reaction, timing the fluorescence, documenting patterns consistent with contact stains. Samples were cut, bagged, and preserved for DNA analysis. Partial fingerprints appeared on the access badge. Though smudged, ridge detail yielded a fragmentary match to Darren Cole, confirmed later through AFIS cross-reference. The badge itself bore expiry stamps linking it to the industrial compound, issued years before, but never deactivated. Its presence in Locker 17 bound Cole directly to the site. Soil recovered from the locker floor was compared to control samples taken from the northern yard. Mineral content and metal filings aligned precisely. Reports noted environmental consistency, strengthening the inference that the locker and yard shared contamination. Claire obtained the findings weeks later through her channels. She pinned photographs of the tarpaulin under luminol glow, the badge, the cable ties. Each was joined to the circled 17 on Lena's map by thick red string. Her wall had become a mirror of the police board, but with her annotations, phrases like object echoes annotation and industrial locus confirmed. The locker's discovery proved the annotation on Lena's map was not symbolic. It was specific. It marked a container that held implements, restraint devices, covering fabric, access credentials. Claire wrote in her notebook, 17 is operational, not arbitrary. Detective Pappas summarized the search in her report. Evidence recovered from Locker 17 demonstrates preparation, concealment, and residue consistent with abduction context. Each page bore her signature and date, filed under Exhibit Admission. The tarpaulin, folded and glowing under chemical light, became the emblem of that search. Photographs circulated internally, blue fluorescence blooming like constellations across its surface. In the sterile lab reports, the numbers aligned: map ink, key tag, locker. All 3 carried the same identifier, 17. And in the darkness of the evidence room, the tarpaulin still carried its silent stains. The evidence from Locker 17 shifted the investigation into active pursuit. Detective Sergeant Eleni Pappas requested transaction audits from nearby hardware suppliers. Purchase orders and point-of-sale logs were combed for cable ties, tarpaulins, and industrial gloves. One store in Ashfield produced a receipt, handwritten in duplicate, showing a cash purchase of heavy-duty cable ties on the evening of August 12, 2007. Surveillance footage recovered from the shop's ceiling camera displayed Darren Cole at the counter, his face angled toward the register. The receipt timestamp read 8:37 p.m. Cell site analysis overlapped the purchase with Lena's disappearance. Cole's mobile device, though rarely used, pinged a tower along Parramatta Road at 8:42 p.m., 5 minutes after the receipt was issued. Analysts prepared a synchronized chart: store transaction, tower ping, bus boarding at 8:45 p.m. The convergence was stark. Additional forensic sweeps targeted Cole's van. Paint scrapings from the vehicle's side panel were layered under a microscope. Analysts compared the chemical binder and pigment profile to a flake recovered from the factory fence. Both samples carried the same paint layer sequence: primer, white enamel, clear coat. Probability of coincidence was deemed negligible. Claire documented every page. She added the retail CCTV still to her wall, pinning it beside the cell site chart. Across the photographs she wrote in marker, synchrony. The evidence did not merely suggest opportunity, it aligned second by second. Meanwhile, fuel station records added context. A handwritten log, maintained by attendants, listed Cole's van fueling for $40 in cash at 8:55 p.m. The ink was cross-referenced to his initials. The entry bridged the window between the hardware store and the industrial gates. Detectives reconstructed a timeline with forensic precision. 8:37 p.m., cable tie purchase. 8:42 p.m., phone ping. 8:45 p.m., Lena boards bus. 9:01 p.m., she steps off near the factory gates. Cole's movements paralleled hers with uncanny proximity. The exhibits multiplied. POS logs, receipts, surveillance frames, cell site charts, paint scrapings. Each was sealed in evidence bags, labeled and stacked within the property office. Claire copied exhibit numbers into her growing ledger. She circled Exhibit 35, the retail receipt, in bold red ink. The narrative coalesced into forensic rhythm. Ink marks on a map, a metal tag in a drain, a locker with a glowing tarpaulin, and now a receipt timestamp aligned to Lena's final steps. When prosecutors reviewed the file, the phrase they underlined was simple: temporal correlation with victim disappearance. And the receipt time mirrored exactly the last ping from Lena's phone. With the accumulation of receipts, fibers, and chemical matches, detectives moved to arrest. Darren Cole was taken into custody during a midnight stop. His van searched in full daylight hours later. Photographs documented every compartment. Inside the toolbox, gloves already marked as Exhibit 29 lay folded beside pliers and wrenches. On the passenger seat, officers recovered a notebook with oil-stained pages, logged and bagged. In the interview room, Cole denied involvement. His answers were clipped, his posture rigid. Yet forensic results closed around him. Probabilistic genotyping of the DNA recovered from the cable ties lifted in Locker 17 produced a mixed sample. Statistical modeling placed Lena Hart's profile within the mixture at likelihood ratios beyond 1 billion to 1. The report, signed by Dr. Aisha Rahman, carried the line, scientifically consistent with victims' presence. Simultaneously, forensic document examiner Emily Cross compared the ink smears lifted from Cole's gloves to the pens issued at the hostel desk. Chromatographic peaks aligned exactly with the solvent batch used in those pens. Cross's commentary read, "Ink origin consistent with Exhibit 12, no alternative source indicated." The implication was direct contact with the map or related writing tool. Photographic inventory of the van uncovered a shallow compartment beneath the floor mat. Inside, officers photographed a small plastic container. Within lay the corroded key tag marked 17. Though Claire's volunteers had recovered one tag from the drain, the second appeared here, its scratches identical in form. Both were admitted under exhibit numbers, Exhibit 32 and Exhibit 40, linking Cole not only to the locker but to possession of its duplicate identifier. Claire followed the updates through official briefings. She copied each exhibit number into her notebook, underlining the duplication. To her, the chain was undeniable. 2 tags, 1 map, 1 locker, each marked 17, each binding Cole to Lena's last trace. In court preparation, prosecutors rehearsed the chain of custody sequence. Hostel pen ink to gloves, backpack fibers to van carpet, DNA to cable ties, key tag to locker. No link stood alone. Together they formed an unbroken lattice. Cole remained silent in interrogation when shown the luminol photographs of the tarpaulin. He shifted only once, when confronted with the ink smear on his glove. His eyes fixed on the photograph, then downward. The tape recorder captured the silence. Exhibit numbers filled the property office shelves. Exhibit 12, folded tourist map. Exhibit 17, original key tag. Exhibit 29, ink-stained gloves. Exhibit 35, receipt for cable ties. Exhibit 40, duplicate key tag. Each sealed, each initialed, each admissible. Claire, seated in the gallery during pretrial hearings, watched the exhibits carried in one by one. They looked inert, plastic bags, faded papers, pieces of metal. But together, they spoke with the weight of evidence. And on the long stainless table, Exhibit 17 and Exhibit 12 lay side by side in their sealed pouches. The trial opened in a packed Sydney courtroom. Reporters filled benches, their notepads echoing the cadence of sworn testimony. At the prosecution table, boxes of exhibits sat stacked, each marked in black. Exhibit 12, the folded map. Exhibit 17, the first key tag. Exhibit 29, the gloves. Exhibit 35, the receipt. Exhibit 40, the second tag. Prosecutor Helen Corcoran opened with a timeline. From Lena Hart's last bus ride at 8:45 p.m. to the locker discovery years later. Every minute was mapped against evidence. Detective Sergeant Eleni Pappas testified first, laying out the chain of custody. Her binder contained admission logs, each page initialed. Jurors followed as she read aloud the flow of evidence, item by item. Cross-examination tested her precision, but each time she produced the signature or timestamp that closed the gap. Forensic scientist Dr. Aisha Rahman presented luminol photographs. On a large screen, the tarpaulin glowed in eerie arcs. She explained protein trace reactions, cataloged controls, and confirmed chain integrity. Emily Cross followed, describing ink chromatography. She projected side-by-side charts. The hostel pen, Lena's map, Cole's gloves. Peaks and valleys aligned exactly. Same solvent batch, same composition, she stated flatly. Fiber microscopy came next. Blue nylon filaments, displayed in magnified color, matched Lena's backpack straps to Cole's van carpet. Soil analysis linked locker dust to the factory's northern yard. Cell site analysts overlaid bus CCTV timestamps with tower pings. The convergence point, factory gates, 9:02 p.m. Claire Hart testified last. She described her chronology of FOI letters, the wall of documents, the volunteers' search. Her voice was steady, her notes precise. She did not describe grief. She described procedure. She ended by reading the inventory number of every exhibit aloud, one after another. The courtroom silent as the chain formed in real time. Cole sat impassive, his counsel raising objections, challenging probabilities, questioning contamination. But the lattice of evidence held. After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated less than 5 hours. The verdict: guilty of murder. Sentence: life imprisonment with non-parole period fixed in words, 30 years. Afterward, Claire stood before microphones, holding a photocopy of the map. Behind her, the courthouse steps gleamed in afternoon sun. She spoke only once. Evidence told the story he never would. The exhibits were transferred to long-term storage. Archival forms noted each sealed pouch, each assigned shelf. Exhibit 12, the folded map, was flattened under glass for preservation. Beside it lay Exhibit 17, the key tag, scratched and dulled, but still legible. In the archive's fluorescent light, the blue circle on the map seemed to hover, faint but insistent. Its ink still pressing down on the paper years after the hand that drew it had vanished. All circles converged on a single number, 17.